Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from the Foodist about how your favorite snack could be banned forever. Favorite snack? Now, that's technically up to interpretation of each person. But either way, let's hop in and see why.
The most important food ingredient is going away
Vine Boom. Haven't heard that in a while.
for good. Which one am I talking about? Salt? Mustard! No, the one that ties any meal together. Red 3. So unless you want to go to jail, you better try it now because the US government is about to make Red 3 illegal. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food.
Yeah, most people actually want Red 40 to go because apparently it's linked to ADHD and sugar highs. Yeah, no, as a person that has ADHD, it's not that. You could give a kid sugar, you could give any kid sugar, and they would just go off the walls crazy for it. The thing is moderation and control. Thanks to my parents, my ADHD has been completely inverted to where instead of I have no attention span, I hyperfixate. Prime example is these videos. I don't do anything except eat whenever I'm recording. I record every video in one day, right after another, before I do anything.
Theory. The only show that's truly to die for. Yeah, and that's DYE, because today we're talking about all things food dye. At some point, especially if you live in the United States, you have no doubt picked up your favorite food or drink, turned over the ingredients on the back, and saw the whole suite of colorful dyes we've come to expect on our food these days. I'm talking Red 40, Yellow 3, and who could forget about Blue 2? And you may have seen these ingredients and thought, these sound like they should be coming out of a quarterback's mouth and not going into mine. These are artificial food dyes, and we've been using them for decades to make our food here in the States look as bright or as toxic as you've come to expect. Unfortunately, the colorful party might be coming to an end soon for one of those precious dyes. In January of this year, the FDA announced that it was revoking its authorization for Red 3, essentially making it banned in all food and drugs in the United States. And I'll be honest, when I heard about this,
why Red 3 specifically?
I was like, that's a good thing, right? Admittedly, now that I think about it, I don't really know what these dyes are in the first place. Like, I've heard of Red 40 and Yellow 5, but should I be worried about them being in all of my favorite treats? And why is Red 3 specifically getting the axe from the feds?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that is what today's episode aims to get to the bottom of. What are these chemical food dyes? Are they dangerous for us to consume? And most importantly, do we actually need them? Drop your socks and grab your Crocs, loyal theorists, as we dive in to explain America's chemical romance with artificial dyes. Let's kick things off by laying out what these artificial dyes actually are. Obviously, the name partly gives it away. They're food dyes and color additives that are not natural, but artificial. Now, artificial in this case doesn't just mean companies are adding it to food where they aren't naturally found, but that the very chemicals themselves are synthetic or artificially made. They're made like any other chemical by reacting various chemicals together to create a tasteless compound that can make any food colorfy. And these dyes are found in all sorts of processed goods that can use a little splash of red, blue, yellow, or green to brighten their day. From Swedish Fish and Fruit Loops to yellow rice and even mouthwash. But you know what doesn't have any artificial dyes? The sponsor for today's episode, AG1. Or as I like to call it, the one responsible decision I make every day. As someone whose diet is roughly 60% chaos and 40% regret, I need to make sure I'm at least getting the vitamins and minerals I need to keep my body going for as long as YouTubely possible. And AG1 has been the thing to support just that. Mainly because I'm lazy and it's literally the easiest thing you can do. I wake up, make myself breakfast, fix myself up a glass, and I'm good to go. And honestly, I found myself not needing to resort to an
You're looking kind of yoked.
Afternoon coffee just to keep me going through the end of the day. The best part, it has prebiotics and probiotics that help keep my gut from imploding after eating one too many turduckens or pie-cakins or whatever monstrosity the internet has me shoveling into my mouth. And listen, I'm not the only one that feels the difference. Not so head editor Dan actually credits AG1 for helping him on his fitness journey. Isn't that right, Dan?
Me? Do I finally get a line?
Ooh, that was all the time you had. So don't be like Dan and waste time. If you use the link in the description below or scan the QR code to subscribe, you can save $20 off your first subscription of AG1. And AG1 is throwing in over $70 worth of free stuff too, like a free shaker, a canister for your powder, and 5 free travel packs. So click the link and thank me later while I thank AG1 now now for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to Red 40. Or 6. Or was it 3? Where do these strange color names come from? Why are they called Red 40 or Yellow 6? Our old pals at the Food and...
My guess would be, like, that's how vibrant it is. Like, the higher the number, the more vibrant or bright it is. Like, red 1 would be, like, the darkest shade of red.
Drug Administration are to thank for that. In 1938, like Congress passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, aka the FD&C Act. It gave the relatively new FDA the authority to oversee the safety of, well, food, drugs, and cosmetics, as well as medical devices. Part of this job involved not only cataloging, but testing every single color additive found in food or cosmetics for safety. And obviously, in this catalog, every additive needed a name. For your natural color additives like dehydrated beets, caramel color, and grape peel skin, they just got to keep their names. But for your artificial dyes, or as the FDA calls them, the certified dyes, they needed a new name. Those certified lover boys, certified color dyes all get a name and number based on their color. You got yellow 5, red 40, blue 2, and so on and so on. And actually, there are less of these artificial dyes that are approved in the United States than you might have realized. Not 900, not 90, but just 9 are approved to be in our food. There are way more that are allowed in our cosmetics, but I'll save that headache for Amy to tackle over on Style Theory. The 9 artificial dyes approved for food by the FDA are red 3 and red 40, blue 1 and blue 2, green 3, yellow 5 and 6, orange B, and citrus red 2. And even
Orange B? Really? You even just said they get the name and a number. That's not a number. Oh yes, number B, my favorite of them number. No, what is this?
And then that list is a bit inflated because there's a big old asterisk next to the last 2. Orange B is only approved to be used in hot dog and sausage casings. But due to some concerns of contamination back in the 70s, the only company that made Orange B said screw it and stopped production, and it hasn't been used ever since. And Citrus Red 2 is only permitted in the color of the skins in oranges. You can't even use it for oranges that are used for orange juice. So unless you're eating the skins of oranges or 50-year-old wieners like a mad lad, you're unlikely to ever ingest any of those last 2 dyes. And even green 3 isn't used that much anymore, because companies often choose to use a mix of blue and yellow to make their classically green foods instead. But you may be looking at this list and notice a few gaps. If there's a red 3 and a red 40, what about reds 4 through 39? Spoiler alert, they do exist, but all of those quote-unquote missing dyes either never got approval in the first place, or much like red 3 is about to be, they got axed. For example, take red 2, also known as amaranth. It used to be allowed under the FD&C Act. That was until 1976 when it was banned for being a suspected carcinogen. But to be honest, I would rather have a bottle of potentially carcinogenic food dye than the other amaranth beverage we've talked about on this channel before. And so over time, the list of approved artificial dyes has become smaller and smaller until eventually we were left with the 9, or technically 7, that we have today. Fun fact, the main 7 are also all approved for use in drugs and cosmetics as well. That is, all except for 1. Which of course brings us to our main culprit of today's video. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, red 3, one of the approved artificial dyes, is losing that approval status. But why? And why now? Well, it all comes down to a little thing known as the Delaney Clause. The Delaney Clause was part of an amendment to the FD&C Act, the one that gave the FDA authority to monitor all this stuff in the first place. Basically, it says, hey, FDA, BT dubs, if you ever find out that any of these additives in our food and makeup cause cancer in humans or animals, you'll ban it, right? And the FDA was like, yup, you got it. And for the past couple decades, that's how it worked. Remember red 2, amaranth? Back in the 70s, studies came out that showed that there was an increased risk in cancer in female mice who were given a high dose of red 2. So the FDA, following the rules of the Delaney Clause, banned it in 1976. Fast forward to the 1980s, and another red dye was now facing some heat, red 3. Similar to 2, red 3 was shown in high doses to cause a significant increase in thyroid cancer in male rats. And so, after looking into these studies, the FDA in 1990 came out and said, yup, this stuff potentially causes cancer in animals, so we're banning it. And yeah, you heard that right. Despite all the hubbub around it now, red 3 was already banned 35 years ago. There was just one catch. It was only banned in cosmetics and topical medications like creams. And everyone was like, what about food and ingested drugs? And the FDA was like, yeah, we'll just do that in a separate action, and then just never did. And so red 3,
35 years, they didn't do shit.
Continued to be allowed in our food for over 3 decades. And why didn't the FDA do anything? The short answer is, they didn't feel like it. In 1992,
Wow,
the FDA was finally
lazy.
going to get around to banning Red 3 in foods, but they claimed they didn't have the resources to fully enforce it. And so they just didn't. That was until 2022, when a bunch of advocacy groups and scientists petitioned the FDA with a lot more data, and the FDA finally agreed, and boom, with a stroke of a pen, Red 3 will now be phased out of our food and drugs for good. And it may not surprise you to hear this,
simple.
the FDA was a little bit slow to the ball in officially ditching Red 3. And
Yeah, again, 3 years.
here's where we have to
Nothing.
zoom out and look at the rest of the world. Because in the EU, Red 3 is known as E127. While it hasn't been completely banned, it's been heavily regulated since 1994, only allowing it to be used in the making of cocktail cherries. Which, when you consider how few cocktail cherries a normal person would eat in their life, I suppose is a pretty low risk. Red 3 faces similar restrictions in Australia and New Zealand. Heck, even one of America's own states jumped the FDA on the ban Red 3 train. In 2023, California passed a
California.
law that would ban Red 3 among other ingredients from being sold inside the Golden State. But regardless of how long it took the US to officially nix Red 3, it's banned now. So what happens next?
So,
and
done.
the short answer is not that much. First off, this ban doesn't actually go into effect officially until January 2027 for foods and 2028 for ingestible medications. But even when it
Really?
does, and this was
Okay.
probably the most shocking thing I found while researching for this episode, there's surprisingly few big brands that actually still use Red 3. The biggest names I could really find were Betty Crocker's Red Icing, Strawberry Yoo-Hoo, and those chalky
Oh.
Valentine hearts that no one eats anyway. Meanwhile,
that's
think of
it?
things that we eat that are like comically, almost radioactively red. M&M's, Swedish Fish, Mountain Dew, Code Red, Cherry,
Yeah.
Airheads, Hawaiian Punch,
All of
Twizzlers,
that.
none of them
Kool-Aid.
actually use Red 3. Instead, opting for Red 3's much more beloved cousin, Red 40. Red 40 seems to be more preferred when companies want a more vibrant red instead of a pink. But when this red
Oh, hey, I actually said something similar to that. And yeah, it's more vibrant, bigger the number.
3 ban finally goes into effect, in all likelihood, all the brands still holding out for Red 3 will probably just switch over to Red 40. But that comes with a whole host of other issues, because Red 40 might not be so good for our bodies either. I mean, for one, some
Oh,
people
yeah?
are just straight up allergic to Red 40, and for some, it can trigger migraines. In mice, studies have also shown that
Okay, now you see, those are reasonable things that I would take into consideration. And if people said they didn't want to have anything that had Red 40. But the most common thing I hear is that and Red 40 just makes kids super hyperactive. When the most common examples of them giving something that has Red 40 is candy. So tell me.
Red 40 can cause inflammatory bowel diseases, colonic inflammation, and even DNA damage. There's also been a ton of research that shows a connection between
Okay.
Red 40
That's
consumption
something.
and an increase in ADHD-like symptoms in some children. That is a
ADHD symptoms, though. That's a whole other ballpark.
big yikes. And it's not just Red 40. Basically, every single one of the artificial dyes currently approved by the FDA shows some sorts of problems. So if all these artificial dyes are potentially harmful for us, the next logical question to ask is, why do we still use them? I mean, remember, these are
That
food
is the
dyes,
question.
not flavorings. They're as tasteless as a British barbecue. There are also
Ooh.
plenty of natural food dyes out there that could, and in some countries do the job of dyeing just fine. Then why do they stick around? Well, reason number one, cost. It is a lot cheaper to produce large quantities of artificial dyes than to try and acquire an equivalent amount of the natural ones. Reason number two,
That is
shelf
true.
life. Synthetic dyes tend to have super long shelf lives. In some cases, dyes can last for years beyond their listed expiration date. But like, do we want that? Who cares if my food still looks as vibrant as the day I bought it if everything else about it expired years ago? Ugh. And
That
the
is
biggest
true.
reason for our love of dyes is the color. For example, take a look at this picture of M&Ms. Do they look off to you? If you're an American, you might be wondering,
They look fine. Maybe a little shinier than most, but they look fine. And like those are definitely a peanut M&M, judging by the shape.
what's up with the colors? Did someone leave them out in the sun for too long? Nope, these are just ordinary European M&Ms. The difference? The use of more natural dyes. Here's them side by side with the American ones. The fact of the matter is that artificial dyes just provide a
the
more
ones look dull.
consistent and vibrant color pattern. Every red M&M in the US is just as red as the last and as big and bright as those stars and stripes. We've just come to expect it. And you know what? That's the real biggest thing that's keeping the US from ditching switching the artificial dyes. It's us. Yeah, it's me. I'm the problem.
It's the consumer.
Me. It seems that many Americans do want to eliminate artificial colors from their food, but perhaps not enough. In 2015, a Nielsen report found that around 42% of consumers worldwide found it very important that products contain no artificial colors. But among North Americans, that number went down to just 29%. And even when there's been pressure on big corporations to cut out the colors, American consumers are just not as big of a fan of the results. In the past decade, Mars, the conglomerate that makes M&M's, Starburst, and Skittles, as well as cereal giants like Kellogg's and General Mills, have all made pledges to the public that they'd phase out artificial colors in their food. They've even gone so far to set hard dates for when that would be accomplished. But eventually, all those days came and went, and most of the brands either missed their goals completely, or in some cases, completely reversed course. You know why?
Yeah,
Turns out, consumers didn't like how their food looked without all those artificial dyes. Take Trix, the cereal with the most obnoxious colors in the cereal space. In 2016, General Mills, the maker of Trix, removed all the artificial colors from its iconic cereal. And sales did initially increase, but eventually, consumer complaints started to pile up and the sales dried up, leading them to switching back to the artificial stuff after just a year and a half. Similarly, the other big brands ended up noticing that American consumers, they've just grown accustomed to the colorful foods. That's not to say that there hasn't been some progress though. 90% of Kellogg's cereals and 85% of General Mills are now made with natural colors and flavors. And while Mars is still hesitant to remove them from their candies, some of their other brands have switched away from the artificial colors as well. But if we want to see those last few artificial dyes come out of our food, then we're gonna have to change the way our brains have been programmed to love the colors. I'm not talking about creating a world without color like that one episode of Fairly Odd Parents. So we need to change our tastes, even though it's not actually changing the taste of our food. When you see a brand advertising their product that has no artificial colors, instead of letting your eyes glaze over that like I know I have before, realize that this is an opportunity to speak with your wallet. For example, take these white cheddar Cheetos made without any of the yellow 6 or red 40 found in the normal Flamin' Hot variety. Let them know that you will still buy this stuff as long as it tastes good. The rest,
I'm just not a fan of like the spicy stuff. That's why I went at the Flamin' Hot Cheetos. If you like them, you like them.
So the world still chugs along without these colors, and so can we. And of course, to those groups of advocates and scientists that keep researching and sharing information about the artificial dyes, keep up the good work. And to the FDA, maybe you can help too. Force the big brands' hands a little bit. That'd be appreciated. And heck, if none of that works, maybe eating less of these processed foods that tend to have the artificial dyes in them might not be a bad idea either way. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, while you're checking out your food packages,
alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see y'all next time when we flick back on. Until then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.